All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Richmond, American University, London. This is our U.S. admissions office, our presentation about the visa application process, the visa webinar. My name is Victoria Yepes Taylor. If you have been in touch with the U.S. admissions office, I'm sure we've had an email back and forth or a call or something like that. Let me get my screen going here and we'll dive into today's presentation. All right, excellent. Here we go. Okay, so this is the UK student visa process, and we are looking at the process from applying from within the US, from within our US-based student population. If you are joining us from another location today, some of the information may still apply. You may still learn some good terms and just definitions and processes and things like that. But just keep that in mind that I'm kind of coming from a US perspective and what the process is like here, because it can vary in different locations. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to throw them into the chat or the Zoom. I think I'll just wait till the end since it's just me on the boards today. So I'll just wait till the end and I'll just run through any questions, and maybe I'll even have answered some of them along the way. So that'll be great. So yes, as I mentioned, Victoria Yepes Taylor here, Assistant Manager of Operations for Admissions. And let us begin. My slides run about 30-40 minutes, and then I leave 10-15 for questions. So yeah, let's do it. All right, so the first thing I like to do is just define the different types of students that we have at Richmond, so you know if the information that I'm sharing applies to you, makes sense for you, or not. So we have several different kinds of students. We have full-time degree-seeking students, both undergraduate and graduate, or as they'll say in the UK, postgraduate. And these are students that want to complete their degree with Richmond. You may have just graduated from high school. You may be transferring to join us, or you may be a graduate student, or as they would say, postgraduate, but planning to complete your degree. Then we have our visiting students. We have students that are visiting for 1 semester, less than 6 months, and students that are visiting for 2 semesters or more than 2 months. So the process that I'm going to outline in this presentation is the process that anybody studying for more than 6 months has to go through. So this would apply to any 2-semester visiting students, and this would apply to our full-time degree-seeking undergraduate and graduate students. If you are a 1-semester visiting student, then you do not need to go through this process. There is a briefer visitor visa process that you go through that's much simpler, and your international team can help you with that. I have a couple of my colleagues posted here. Kiera Moreno Bowie, she supports our USC and our SMU visitors. Camille Brewster, our Tulane visitors, and then Maggie Burton, a variety of other visiting students. So if you are a 1-semester visitor and with one of those programs, then they would be your first point of contact. If you are a 1-year visiting student, then a lot of this will apply, but I won't be your main source of info. One of those team members will be, but happy to help however I can. But for today, my focus is going to be full-time degree-seeking students, undergraduate, graduate. I myself am a proud Richmond alum, so certainly happy to share my experience through the process as well. Although I will say that the experience has become a little bit more involved than when I was a student, and most of that just is enhanced security measures throughout the process. All right, so now we know who it's for. We've set the stage. Okay. This is the question we're all here to answer. This is the question I get a lot, and maybe the motivation, inspiration for this presentation. Where is my CAS letter? Okay, that's a great question. Um, there could be a couple different answers. There's some criteria you need to meet. to receive your CAS letter. So my initial response, I've been told, is a little cheesy, but as always, one does not simply receive their CAS letter. Okay, there's a criteria that is required to receive your CAS letter, and we will dive into it. So it's typically that maybe you haven't met a certain criteria. It's not that I'm trying to keep you from applying for your visa, I promise. All right, so let's start the timeline here of preparing to study in London. Step number one, you have to let us know that you want to come join us. So there's either one or two steps, depending on whether you're undergraduate or graduate or a visitor. So for undergraduate students coming to join us, there's two steps. It's completing your offer acceptance form, and it's paying your £300 non-refundable tuition deposit. So those are the two items to commit to say, yes, I want to join Richmond. For graduate students, postgraduate students, there is no tuition deposit. There is not a £300 tuition deposit. There's no deposit at this stage. It's just the offer acceptance form. Now, this stage is very important because whether you've accepted your offer or you've submitted your deposit, this updates kind of where you are in the journey and the kind of communications that you'll receive. So the first step is always accepting your offer, filling out that form, and then the tuition deposit. If you've paid the tuition deposit recently, it may just need to be processed. But if it's been a few days and you haven't received any updates, then feel free to reach out to us and let us know, and I'm happy to investigate it and just make sure that you're in whatever stage you're meant to be. The next thing that we can do before we even have our CAS letter is consider funding. If you're planning on using the FAFSA, if you are eligible for FAFSA, then you can definitely include Richmond on that. There's our code right there, G10594. There's two ways to add a university on FAFSA. You can either search for them or you can use the code. The code is the fastest way. Searching for us with the full name is always challenging because our name on FAFSA it's got abbreviations. So a lot of times students will, get mixed up and won't be able to find us. But the code, we pop up every time. And then the final item you could be working on is exploring housing. And we have our accommodation webpage right there. And that is a separate process to the visa process, but something that's kind of going on simultaneously over the summer. And so these are all things you can do before you apply for your visa, things that you need to do before you apply for your visa. And these are all things that you can be working on. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So I know it's going to seem like I'm kind of repeating myself, but it cannot be repeated too much. So how to accept the offer. If you apply to us on our direct app on our website or on the Common App, then it's just completing the offer acceptance form on our website. If you applied via UCAS, a little more rare for US students, but if you were looking at other UK schools as well, then you need to sign into the UCAS track and reply to offers there. And make sure that you're checking out, seeing when your personal decision deadline is and making sure you're replying by that date. All right. And then what are the steps? To review, checking out accommodation, submitting £300 deposit if you're an undergraduate, full-time degree-seeking student, applying for FAFSA if you are eligible, if you need it, if that's what you want to do, sending us copies of your final qualifications and transcripts as soon as they're available. They might not be available just yet, but it is a good time to be sure that whatever the process is for your school, your university, to getting that final transcript over to us, that you know what it is and you've done it, particularly for students that are joining us from high school. Not that I do not want you to pester your high school counselors, they do so much, but just make sure you know what the procedure is and they know that you need an official copy sent to us when that's ready. Because I do find that when there's a point where we kind of hit in the summer where a lot of high school teachers, counselors are off on their break, and I think they're just not as familiar with the student visa process and how we need these official documents. So, please don't bother them too much, but just make sure that you have an idea of when that transcript is going to come out so that if we haven't received it, around that window, we can, you can reach back out to them if you need to, or we can kind of let you know, hey, we haven't received that. Because many students are waiting for this, for their offer to update from conditional, which is most offers, to unconditional, which happens when you meet the conditions listed on your offer letter. Final item, requesting a transfer credit evaluation if needed. So you may be waiting on some AP scores to come in. That's okay. Just make sure that you've requested that the College Board send us official copy. And when you get your unofficial results, which usually happens faster than the official ones, you can just send us a screenshot of that. You may be waiting for IB scores. Or if you're a transfer student and we need to get some transfer credits reviewed for you, these are all things we can be working on. Okay, so plenty of stuff to do even before the visa application begins officially. All right. When can I apply for my visa? So I title this CAS prep, CAS preparations. You may have been hearing the term, the phrase CAS. What is that? Confirmation of Acceptance for Studies. This letter, it's a CAS letter, and it's also got a number on it that's known as a CAS number, unique to you, is needed to start the visa application. You cannot start the visa application before you have this letter. Now, there's criteria that needs to be met to receive this CAS letter. And because there's criteria that needs to be met and different people will meet that criteria at different times, I can't give you an exact date on when you will get your letter because it varies. Each person graduates different at a different time. Different people are figuring out funding. Some people may be working on waiting for their passport. So because of that, it's when all of these items come together that we can issue your CAS letter. Now, what are all the items? If you're looking for a checklist, this is it. Number one, getting an unconditional offer. So go back, check out your original offer letter. What are the conditions? Maybe you've submitted some of the things already. Maybe you're waiting for something else. If you think we should have everything and you're all set and you should have an unconditional offer, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do a check for you and see if there's anything we're missing. When you have an unconditional offer, you do receive a brand new offer letter by email that says unconditional offer. Number two, valid passport. Before you can get a visa, you have to have a valid passport. This process can take several weeks, especially if it's your first passport. So this is something you can be working on if you need, if you don't have your passport. If you do have your passport, please do, send us a scan or photo of the name and picture page if you haven't done so already. That's important. Not immediately, but it's just, again, it's when all these things come together. So anything that you can do now, the better. The next item, we have our CAS request form. This is a simple form that you fill out on our offer holder page that it's kind of like a double check. We'll ask you to confirm some info about your passport, kind of ask a couple questions about funding, make sure you understand the visa process a little bit. And this form does not immediately action the creation of your CAS letter because, again, the CAS letter only comes when all of these items are ready. But it is one of the items on our checklist. So when we're going to see if you're ready, we got to see if we have the CAS request form. The next item would be the, hold on, do I have a notification there? Oh, okay. All right. I'll come back to the Q&A. The next item, an important one, is the CAS payment. So a portion of tuition is due to receive your CAS letter. For U.S. undergraduates, it's £4,000. For U.S. graduates or postgraduate students, it's £5,000. Now, this does go towards tuition. This isn't an extra amount. And you can also deduct if you paid the £300 tuition deposit already, that can be deducted from that for undergraduate students. If you are planning to use loans to cover this, to cover all of tuition, then the way that this item is checked would be, oh, I lost my train of thought for a second. So the way that this would be checked is you go through the loan process, and when the loan is confirmed, that even though loans don't get dispersed to Richmond till classes begin, it counts as meeting this criteria because the loan is kind of like a contract, like an agreement. And the final item is the maintenance funds, or it can be covered by loans. So maintenance funds are it's the concept that the UK government wants to know that a student can support themselves while they're in the UK. They've calculated that a student needs about, or exactly 1,334 pounds per month for 9 months, essentially your first year. This is equivalent to 12,006 pounds, which is equivalent to about 15,000 US dollars. Now, US passport holders do not have to provide this evidence to Richmond, and you don't have to provide this information when you initially apply for their visa. But there is always the possibility that it could be requested, this evidence could be requested of you at some point during the visa application. It's incredibly rare. I haven't seen it in the past 5 years, but we have to be prepared for the incredibly rare. So this maintenance fund could be covered in loans. This maintenance fund could be covered in, could be shown through evidence of a checking savings account of a student, of a parent, anything like that. If you are going the checking account route or bank account route, then it does need to have been in that account for at least a month. So that's why we talk about it now, so that we're not within that window and, it has to kind of already been nestled in that account if that's the route you're going to go. If it's a parent's account, then you will also need to have a copy of the birth certificate if it was requested. Again, very rare that this information is requested, but it's actually not. It makes a lot of sense for the UK government want to be sure that a student can support themselves while they're in the UK, especially because they're going to be a full-time student studying. So we want to make sure that they're going to be okay. And then this funding, this maintenance fund, this isn't given to anybody. This isn't, this is for student to live, and they could use it towards housing or just life expenses, things like that. If you have more questions, I can always go into more detail, but that's the gist. So it's when all of these items come together that a student can receive their CAS letter. Typically, every student that I work with is one of these things is the final item for them. Maybe they're working on their FAFSA. Maybe, that's been a project for a lot of people this year. Maybe they're working on, just waiting for final transcripts, whatever it may be. The visa application process can take about 3 to 5 weeks. So we are okay. You're all right. But the purpose of this webinar is to kind of provide you with all of the information so that whenever your window comes to be ready to apply for the visa, you know what you need to do, and you're not trying to learn all this then. You've got it, you've kind of, you've got it figured out. I acknowledge that some things won't make perfect sense until you kind of get to that stage, and then you'll say, oh, that's what Victoria was talking about. I didn't understand what she was saying before, but now, now I understand. All right, new slide. I have my CAS letter. Am I done? To which I always have to say, but wait, there's more. I know it feels like you've already done so much to receive your CAS letter that you just think, do I have my visa? Is it over? Unfortunately not. It's great that you have your CAS letter. That's very exciting. That means you've met all that criteria, but you've got to apply for your visa now. Your CAS letter is not your visa. It is your gateway to your visa. Okay, so once you receive this CAS letter from the UK admissions office and you receive it by email, you can start with your online visa application. You complete it on the Home Office website and you apply before you travel. They always say no more than 6 months before the start of your course date, but we're within that window, so that's fine. Here's a little screenshot of what the website looks like. And here's the hyperlink. You can always check it out if you'd like to, gov.uk, what is it, /student-visa/apply. You can't get very far into the application without your CAS letter, and more specifically your CAS number, because that's how the process works. All right, so we've kind of talked about the timeline a little bit. Let's talk about the fees so we're not surprised about anything. So for the student visa, there's the application fee and there's the immigration health surcharge. The application fee is £490, equivalent to about 600 US dollars. The health surcharge fee, the IHS fee, is £776 per year of expected study, equivalent to about 986. Let's just keep the math easy, equivalent to about 1,000 per year. So this is why a transfer credit evaluation is important if you are bringing transfer credits, because Richmond has to calculate your anticipated graduation date, because that's how we calculate, or that's how they calculate the health charge funding per expected year of study. I'm going to have some examples to kind of go through the math of just some general examples, but of course everyone's a little different. So if you're bringing some transfer credit with you, it might, the numbers might look a little different, but it'll give you an idea. Also got an asterisk here that the fees are based on the length of your visa, including any wrap-up period. They typically add a little extra time at the end of your visa as well, and you have to be covered for that too. It's important to use your course start and end dates listed on your CAS letter when completing your visa application. So when you receive your CAS letter, review the letter and double check, see if there's any, if you think there could be any errors, if you think any dates don't seem right. Our UK admissions office works very hard on these letters. There's a lot of detail that they're checking on them, but hey, everybody, there's human error, so it never hurts to check. And most of the time, I'd say 9 times out of 10, the reason there's a reason that they put whatever information they put on the letter. It might not, you may have thought, hey, why didn't they put this date or that date or what have you? But there's usually a reason. So if there's anything you don't understand about the letter, let us know, because when you're filling out your visa application, you should rely on that letter for all the information that they want. You want your letter to match your application exactly. Let's go through some examples. So I've got kind of 2 simple examples. First one, let's say you're an incoming freshman, no transfer credits, keeping the math easy for me. You've got your application fee, $490. You've got your IHS fee, $3,104. I add those together, I get $3,594, equivalent to about 4,567 US dollars. So the visa application is a one-time thing. There is no yearly renewal. That's why we have to do all this. They do all the math and calculations at the start. There is no, even if you do intend, sometimes students join us and aren't sure if they're going to complete their whole 4 years with us. But for the visa process, you have to sign up for whatever through your graduation date, what that would be, because there is no renewal stage. It's a one-time thing. And this is different. If you've looked at, I think I was working with some students that were familiar with the process in France, and I think in France it's a yearly process. So every country's got their own different rules. Let's look at another example. Say you're a graduate student, parentheses, fall start. I mentioned fall start because if you're a spring start, your length of study is a little different, a little longer. So fall start, which means you have classes in fall, classes in spring, and a summer session. So it's essentially a full year. You've got your application fee, $490. You've got your IHS fee, $776. Adding that up, $1,266 pounds, equivalent to about 1,600 US dollars. Now, this fee is due at the start of the visa application. A reason that we like that it's important to highlight this fee now would be because it is an important fee to consider when planning for the fall. This paying for your visa takes place prior to arrival. So student loan funding is not dispersed to Richmond until classes begin. So if you're planning on using any student loan funding, those loans wouldn't be dispersed by the time you need to apply for your visa. Now, with that in mind, some students and parents will kind of keep in mind how much they are spending on the visa and include that when they're doing their calculations in how much they want to take out in student loans. But I always want to highlight that gap that you have in just time that student loans don't get dispersed till courses begin. This is important to keep in mind, not just the visa process, but for housing, things like that. If you're not going with one of our partner accommodation providers, just always good to make sure that if you're planning to use student loan funding to pay for housing, that they either understand your loan disbursement date or that they're willing to work with you or do a payment plan or whatever. At the top of the screen here, I've got, you can go to the Immigration Health Surcharge page, gov.uk page, and see, you can put your program start date, your program end date, and you can do the math, just in case you fall in between this. Maybe you've got a semester of transfer credit or something like that. So I'm not saying this math is exact for everybody, but I think these two calculations kind of give you a good idea. For example, for the graduate student one, that could also apply to a student who's coming, a one-year visitor, that would apply to them. And then, of course, if you're bringing transfer credits in, then that would maybe, if you have at least a semester's worth, could shorten the time to graduation, reduce IHS fee, things like that. So if you, if you ever have any questions about how yours would be calculated, let me know. We can always kind of go to the checker and see what the gov.uk page would say. Okay, so you've paid your fees. You filled out the visa application, you paid your fees. Now we've kind of come to a fork in the road. You have two options of how you want to move forward with your visa application. Neither one better or worse, especially at this point in the year in May. Either way is fine. It's just you do need to know which route you want to go so that you select the correct option on the visa application. So why are you being mysterious, Victoria? What are the two options? So majority of students will go to their biometrics appointment. Biometrics meaning fingerprints and a picture of your face taken. Most students will go to a biometrics appointment at their local USCIS office, United States Citizenship Immigration Services office. Sometimes they'll call it Homeland Security offices. And you can just Google your city and USCIS, and you can see where the nearest office is. I was surprised to learn, I think the one for me is like 5 minutes away, which is kind of a surprise, but there's usually one in each, every other town or so. That is one option, to go to a local USCIS office. Option two is to go to a premium center. These are run by an organization called VFS Global. I'll show their logo a little bit later so you can kind of just get familiar with seeing these things. So I mentioned that there's a fork in the road here, because if you opt to go to a local office, which pros of a local office, usually you can get an appointment pretty soon. Since they are in multiple cities and different areas, it usually, if you're at this point in your visa application, you can get an appointment within about a week or two, not too bad. Not a con, but just a good thing to know. These offices handle all kinds of US immigration business. So they're not UK visa experts. They're going to they're going to take your fingerprints, they're going to take your picture, they're going to send you on your way. So that's why I want you to be as informed on the process as possible, so that you don't have to kind of depend on them for information about UK visas, because they are not the best source. So that's one option, USCIS office, plenty of those throughout the states. The other option is there are premium VFS Global, V like Victoria, F like Frank, S like Sam, VFS Global centers. There's about 10 in the US. They kind of favor the major cities. Growing up as a student, I would say not in the top 10 major cities. I think we kind of know, on the East Coast, West Coast, and then there's Chicago, and I think Houston and Texas, and, New York, LA, kind of the main cities. There are these premium offices where you can go for an in-person appointment, and you'll submit your whole visa application at those locations. So Premium Center, of course, has gives you the clue there that there's going to be an additional cost. But a lot of students, parents like the idea, and it depends on where you're located, like the idea of being able to go into an office and kind of submit everything there. Whereas if you go to a local office, you're doing this biometrics bit, and then you're mailing your application to the New York office for processing. So Either way, at some point, you're going to get your fingerprint scanned and your photo taken. And notable differences between the standard and premium route from this point on. Okay, so if you opted to mail your application, then what you do is when you go to your appointment, sometimes they'll call them ASCs as well, application support centers, and they'll stamp your appointment confirmation letter, and you're going to mail that off along with your application form that you print out, along with your passport, along with a UPS shipping label, and any other supporting documents. Very rare that there are any others, but I say it just in case. And you're going to send it to the VFS Scanning Hub Center in New York. I've removed the specific address because they will give you a sheet with the address that they want you to send it to. And sometimes in the past, there have been slight changes, so I don't want to put a address right there. And it'll go to New York. And so a couple things to highlight here. So you have 5 days after you go to your biometrics appointment, if you pick the local route, to print out your form. I mean, the best bet is to go to your biometrics, have everything with you, go to the post office and mail it off once you have your appointment is done. Current passport. You have to submit your passport when you mail everything off, because they're going to put a physical sticker in your passport. So this is important to think about if you have any kind of international travel planned. There is going to be a period of time where you're not going to have your passport. So if you need help strategizing, figuring out when you should go, happy to talk about that. A UPS return shipping label. I cannot emphasize a UPS. You can send it to them through any, they don't really care who it comes from, but to return it when they send everything back to you, it's got to be a UPS. If they don't get one, they're going to send you an email charging you for a UPS return shipping label. So you might as well get one in so that it's in your package and they have it. You want to make your application as easy for the person that's reviewing it as possible. All right, so I've got it highlighted, bold, and starred. You got to submit your passport. I pulled this from their website. All applications must include current passport with at least one blank page. If your application is submitted without a passport, excuse me, if your application is submitted without a passport, the application will be refused. Now, I happen to know that it is possible to reunite a visa application and a passport, but it is not fun. So please, please do submit your passport. If you're mailing it off, include that in the mailing along with all the other items I highlighted and listed. UKVI, Visa and Immigration, they do have some customer service resources that if you need, you can use, but it's not the speediest and most efficient process. So the more that we can just get everything right, have the package be right, the better. Of course, if you need to use our customer service, you certainly can, but it's just, if we can just avoid it, let's avoid it. All right. So I mentioned that's the mail off option. Again, if you end up going to a premium center, then you won't be mailing it off. You'll be doing your biometrics at that center. You'll be submitting everything and then they'll be mailing it back to you, or you can pick it up at the location as well. Premium Center, just to give you an idea of cost, they have a student package that's not bad. It kind of just gives you the right to go to a premium center. I believe it's an additional $300, $400 on the application. I do understand not bad is kind of subjective. I understand that the visa already has a significant cost. So if you want to go the traditional mail-in route, you certainly can. I know a lot of times students get nervous. Oh my gosh, my passport in the mail, all of that. But you get it. You get the fastest shipping you can. You track it all along the way. It's people do it all the time. But if you rather go to a premium center, if you're able to, depending on your location, then that's an option to consider as well. And so the cost. So the most popular, so there's the student option, which is a newer one, which at first I was leery about because I didn't know too many students that had selected that, but now I have worked with students that have selected that package and it has worked fine for them. The second most popular, or first most popular program is they have a silver package that offers a 5 business day turnaround, but it is a significant cost, about an additional $800-900 to get that silver package, to get that 5-day turnaround. Just so you know all the options, they have a gold package. It offers about a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. I don't think anyone is at this stage needs that, but they have services and packages for everybody. That gold package does about double the cost of the visa, so I'm by no means encouraging that, just letting you know what the options are. They also have a bronze package, which is, I believe it's about an additional 400 to 500 US dollars. But I find that one and the student package to be pretty similar. So if you're not looking for a faster turnaround, both the student and the bronze package offer about a 3-week turnaround. Mailing your application off, it too can take about 3 weeks. So it just kind of depends on if you do have any kind of time crunch and you do need to strategize for that for any reason, then maybe a premium center might be, could be a route for you. Maybe not. Happy to talk about the pros and cons. Okay, so your visa's been issued. Hooray! What now? So US nationals will receive a 90-day vignette, aka sticker, and it looks like the image you got on the side there, in their passport. And that's what they use to enter into the UK. Now, when you arrive at customs in the UK and you can arrive up to a month before classes begin, you have to make sure that you go to a gate agent to show them your visa vignette. If you go through the electronic gates, which there are so many, there are plenty, but there's also signs to go to the gate agent. If you go through the electronic one, then you're just entering the country as a US citizen who can enter for up to 6 months. It's not kicking in, getting your visa going the way it needs to. So you have to go to a gate agent when you arrive at customs. If you do arrive in London, for whatever reason, if you're arriving before the 28 days before classes begin, then you can enter the UK just as a tourist, as a visitor, and then you will need to exit and re-enter the country within that window to activate the student visa part of things. You don't have to go back to the US. You could, Paris, Rome, I don't know, wherever. But yeah, so just keep that timing in mind. Then once you arrive in the UK, you go to collect your BRP card, biometrics residence permit, at a local post office, and the card will have the full length of your visa. So the vignette just has the window that you're able to enter the UK in. A lot of times students will get nervous. They say, Victoria, I signed up for 4 years. Why does my visa vignette say I have to, it's good through December? And that's because the sticker, the vignette, will expire. It's the BRP card that will be your full journey. That will last your full visa. If you have a passport from the EU, then there is a online option for the biometrics and the vignette part of it. So if you do have an EU passport, definitely encourage you to use that, and happy to talk to you about that. It's a digital vignette that you use or not vignette, but a digital visa that you use to enter the UK. And actually, starting, I believe after this group, after the fall group joins, they're going to be moving, I believe, everyone to an electronic visa. So all students who are joining us, there may be some updates to how the visa looks, whether they keep the card or go electronic. But for now, you arrive and you'll pick up your BRP card, unless you're an EU national. All right, great. So all right, what did I say? 40-ish minutes? Okay. So I've just got a couple little screenshots here because I think it may be helpful just for you to kind of see what some of the documents look like. So when you receive them, they're not new and scary. It was my first time. This is kind of I feel like this is like a bonus edition visa webinar because this is the first time I've added some of these items, but these are things that students have sent me, just different screenshots from their journey through the visa process. This first one, I just took a little screenshot from the confirmation, the CAS letter. confirmation of acceptance details. So you can see here, there's so much, it's about 2 pages. There's so much information when you receive the letter. So please do review it. And you want to make sure that when you're filling out your visa application, you are being as accurate as you can. So top questions I get, students will ask what our sponsor license number is. That is on the first page of the CAS letter. Got the name of the school. Your CAS number will be there. I've got that blocked out because this is a particular student's. Status as assigned, the date that it was issued, and you see the date it expires. So a lot of times students will get nervous about that, but this is just to apply for your visa. And if you're planning to join us for fall, you're going to be applying before November. And then some language here about students being able to work up to 20 hours a week on the student visa. All right, other questions I get, and this kind of may make more sense if you're reviewing this when you're diving into the visa application. They're going to ask course level. If you're a undergraduate BA student, not just psychology, but any program, it's level 6. And if you're a master's student, it's level 7. So that's just a little bit of different language that we don't really use here in the States. What else? They're going to ask what kind of sponsor you're studying with. It's a higher education provider with a track record of compliance. There's also one that says higher education provider and doesn't have the rest of it. Students have used either one, but the better answer is this one with the record of compliance. Sponsor license number, they'll ask for our address. All this is on the CAS letter. They're going to ask where you want to pick up your BRP card at the local post office. It's up to you. You can pick the Chiswick post office. You can give them that zip code. You can pick the post office closest to your housing. You can pick whatever post office you want. That's where it will be. And you can, start to familiarize yourself. If you're not familiar with UK zip codes, they do have letters and numbers, a little different than the US. This is an example of an appointment confirmation. This student was going to a USCIS in Fort Worth, Texas. And this, I was going to show the rest of it, but there was way too much to block out, so it didn't really make any sense. And then there's that VFS Global. So they're reminding you if you self-uploaded documents, you still have to mail your passport, stamped biometrics page, UPS, readable courier label. That reminds me, sometimes the language is a little different, US, UK, even though we're all speaking English. So if you ever have any questions about the wording, feel free to reach out. Don't be embarrassed, whatever. Better to make sure you answer the question right than to guess. Excuse me. So you have 5 days after going to biometrics to get that mailed off. You cannot drop it off in person. This is for the mailing option. And here they have the address that they supplied the student to mail it to. Always go with what address you're supplied with. When you go to your biometrics, they should give you a sheet of paper about the UK visa and where you should be mailing it to. Go with that address. This is, they'll supply you with a document checklist of what you need to send. And sometimes students get nervous. They say, the only item on my checklist is my passport. And for most US students, that will be the only item. Being that we are applying through, or we encourage students to apply through the differentiation arrangement, which means we don't have to submit transcripts for the visa application. We don't have to submit financial evidence. Passport is the main thing. So you just check that on the form. And then when you're mailing off your form, this is always confusing. This document is kind of designed for the in-person appointment. So if you're mailing off your form, because in some countries, they only have the in-person appointments, but in the US, we kind of have this option of going to a local USCIS. So if you're mailing it off, then you do sign this form, obviously not the official use part, but the applicant name, you sign that off before mailing it off. And then I just wanted to highlight, after you arrive in the UK, you collect your BRP card at whatever post office you selected. If you want to check the Chiswick one, that would be the zip code there, W44JF, or if you want to pick the one closest to your housing, whatever you like. Okay, all right, how do we do? About 40, 45, I got a little chatty. All right, let's see what's going on. All right, where do we send a picture of our passport? Yeah, so you can send that to, I'll put my email address at the end. You can send it to me. You can send it to admissions at Richmond. You can send it to the US admissions address. We just need a scan or a photo just attached to an email. Just need that on file. As kind of doesn't really come up until they start working on your CAS letter, and they want to double check the numbers and that you put the right the right passport number, and just make sure the dates, expiration dates, all that stuff kind of matches up, so the picture helps with that. I've received and submitted my unconditional acceptance. All right. But I've not yet received any further information. Should I reach out to enrollment as well? Is there a link to the CAS request form? Okay, so let me break it down. You've received and submitted your unconditional. Okay, great. Have you submitted your tuition deposit? I'll post my email at the end, and I can take a little deeper dive tomorrow and sort of see where you're at. Because you do need your deposit, but unconditional, those are kind of the two things, deposit and, if you're an undergraduate, I think you are, but anyway, deposit and offer, as well as the CAS request form. Yeah, I could send you a link to that as well. No problem. All right. Where are the premium centers? How do we find them? Yeah, so if you want to just Google VFS Global Premium Centers, there's 10 in the US, New York, LA, Houston, Chicago, what's that, 5? DC, I think. So yeah, it basically favors the coast and then a little bit of central. But yeah, if you just want to Google Premium Centers VFS Global, or if you are having trouble finding it, you can email me and I can pull up the list as well. What is the date that incoming freshmen arrive? So the first orientation is, I always have to look at a calendar because this year it's just a smidge later than usual. So orientation week starts Monday, September 2nd is the start of orientation week. It's just, that day is just move-in if you're going with Richmond Housing. And then the rest of the week, 3rd through the 6th, is orientation activities. First day of classes is the 9th, September 9th. Okay. Is there a way to extend the visa after your studies? I'm level 7 to stay in the UK and work. Yeah, there's a graduate visa that students who graduate from a UK university, either undergrad or graduate school, can apply for to stay in the UK up to 2 years after graduation. The way that it works, so first you still get your student, you still do student visa. And then towards the end of your program, if you are interested in that, it is good to kind of work in unison with student affairs on the application, because there's a small window where you have to still be covered by your current student visa, but also be able to apply for the new one. So in order to bridge that gap, you want to be in communication with student affairs so they can help you navigate that. This visa is newer. It's been, I think, maybe it's been about 2 years now. So I know our student affairs department has had some experience helping students, jump from one to the other. But it is good to kind of plan and prepare for it. But it's neat. It's an exciting option. Prior to it, the only way to stay was to have an employer sponsor you. And that's kind of hard to do when you've just graduated or even just interned. So it is really neat. So definitely encourage looking into that. Okay. What should postgraduates do for housing? Step 1, I encourage you to check out our accommodation page. I can email you a link if you need. Let me just get my, let me get some email addresses up here so that if anyone needs anything. Yeah, so if anyone needs anything, you can check that out. Sorry, what else was I going to say? Oh, graduate housing. So graduate students, and undergraduates too, all of our students are commuters in one form or another, whether it's with one of our partner providers or an alternative option or the classic apartment room search, just like you would do here in the States. I find that graduate students are more interested in kind of doing something outside of the Richmond partner options. The perks, may not be as valuable to them as they've been been through, you know, the college experience before and kind of maybe having a hall director and roommates and that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to check out on our accommodation page, and I can email you a link if you need, just send me an email. There's our partners are listed first, and you're welcome to check them out too. And then below that, there's some alternative options. There's some professional dorm organizations that just focus on grad students, like GradPad. That could be something to check out. Or there's the classic kind of room share, a flat share, apartment share search as well. So a couple different ways to go about it. If you need any advice, let me know. I've lived both in student housing and out of student housing, and I can also connect you with our housing coordinator who also moved to London not too long ago. So I think she's got some good tips as well. Oh, thank you. Great presentation. I appreciate it. Yeah, and then there was one other thing I wanted to highlight. Let me back up, get the emails off for just a moment. So this kind of concludes our spring webinar series. Our Student Affairs Department has begun their webinar series in preparation for fall. So they have, I believe it's 4 sessions coming up. One has been, one is wrapped up, and then they'll have a few more, one a Q&A for parents, just like student life, all kinds of things like that. So stay tuned for that. They'll also be posting, you know, and sharing recordings if you need, because I know they're based in the UK, so sometimes the timing is a little trickier. Yeah, so that's the latest for any upcoming webinars. And then yeah, we'll definitely share this recording. It'll be posted on our YouTube page as well in just a little bit. So you know, you can check it out there. And oh, let's see, did I miss anything here? Do grad students need a separate unconditional offer? I accepted offer online, but don't remember getting a second separate offer. If you don't mind, send me an email and let me just see. You may have, I forget, because I know we've talked a little bit. I forget, you may have received an unconditional offer initially if you were already graduated through whatever your prior program was. So you may have just gotten one and that's just the unconditional, or if you still have any conditions to be met, or if I need to check and see if maybe you have met them all and, you know, for whatever reason we just need to update, let's find out. Let's look into it. You know, this is the time for that. So that's great. I think super. I think let me conclude the recording. So if you're watching this recording, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. Do keep in mind this recording is we're talking, it's the end of May 2024. If you're watching this a little bit later in the summer or another time, please feel free to reach out and, you know, just to make sure timing is accurate, advice stays the same, anything's changed. But otherwise, happy to help and support getting you over to London. Thank you for watching this session.